Was it better growing up in the 1970s, or is it better now? What this video is about is the differences between growing up now and growing up in the 70s. My generation, I'm a boomer, born in 1961. What growing up in the 1970s created in terms of the way we live our lives, our attitude to things. I was just thinking back to this and talking with my wife in the car as we drove up here to Castle Howard, and I've left her, by the way, at the garden centre looking at plants whilst I go and have this rant and this ramble. I personally think it was a fantastic era to grow up. I went to school in a little market town called Wetherby, to Wetherby High School. I went there in 1972. That's where I made some lifelong friends. And if I just think back to those days, what life was like compared to how it is now. Let's start with the obvious one, social media. The thing that the UK government is trying to ban. Well, there wasn't any, was there? There was no social media. There were no mobile phones. If you wanted to talk to your pals, you had to ask your mum and dad if it was okay to use the home phone. My home phone was on the kitchen wall. It was one of those that was on the wall. I had to be careful what I said because if my mum was often in the kitchen as well. But if I was going to ring my mates, the only thing we'd really be ringing about would be to organise what we were going to do, where we were going to meet up. For me, that was mostly liaising with them and coordinating our Saturday trips to Elland Road to watch Leeds United. And more of that later in terms of how things have changed. If I did want to make a private phone call, and that probably came a little bit later, when I had girlfriends, and I got my first girlfriend when I was 15, I would walk down the village to the local local phone box in the village, the red ones that you had to put money in, and I'd go armed with a bit of money, and I'd call my girlfriend. What would a 15-year-old be doing now? Well, I guess they'd be on their social media, wouldn't they? They'd be WhatsApping and Instagramming, things like that. I'm a little bit out of touch with what the teenagers of today actually have, but it'd be something like that. So yeah, communication was very, very different. And then there was this freedom, if you like, to just get out there and do things. So I'd be coordinating with my pals to go and see Leeds United on a Saturday. How did that work out? Did mum and dad give me a lift to the football match, or did they give me a lift to my mate's house? No, they didn't. I caught the bus, a local bus, 5 or 6 miles from the little village that I lived in just outside Wetherby, down into Wetherby, meet up with my mates. I'd be, 13 years of age, something along those lines. Meet up with my pals, catch the bus to Leeds, go and watch the football match. Again, nope, season tickets, didn't need a season ticket, just queued to get into the match. How different that is now. So we queued to get into the match, we'd watch the match, and then we'd be back on the bus to Wetherby and then back home, probably arriving home at sort of 7, 8 o'clock at night. And I'd only be 13 years of age. And it was perfectly normal just to do that, just to be out doing that kind of thing. The sort of things that we also did was we used to arrange to meet up and have a little bit of a cycle. And I'd cycle 5, 6 miles to meet up with them. And we'd be out for the whole day. We'd probably head out around lunchtime, wouldn't come back until tea time or when it was getting dark, and we'd be out all day. And it was perfectly normal. And we were just young, 12, 13, 14, that kind of age. Can the kids of today do that? Well, no, they can't. What was television like in the 1970s? Well, it was practically non-existent, let's be honest. For a start, at the beginning of the 1970s, it tended to be black and white, and the television was rented from radio rentals in Acomb in York. I remember my mum and dad getting very excited when they got their first colour television. I guess that would be sometime in the mid-1970s. But television wasn't a thing necessarily that we as teenagers were that bothered about. We didn't really, spend our lives consuming. That's just not what we did. Probably about the only thing that I did consume would be Top of the Pops. Of course. It was the only way I could get to see David Bowie at the end of the day. And that was about the only consumption that we had. I remember vividly sitting in front of the television in my teens with my tape player, the ones with the little buttons, like 5 or 6 buttons across the bottom, microphone attached to it, pointing at the television, right in front of the television, recording David Bowie singing Life on Mars. That was the only way I could get the recordings. I didn't have enough money to be buying records, and I guess that's the other thing that was different. There were no streaming services. There was no Spotify, Apple Music, those kind of things. You got your music, you listened to it on the radio, you stuck that microphone in front of the radio or the television, and that's how you got your music. The other thing that we often did, my friends and I, is we would go to the local record shop and we would browse the records. David Bowie would bring out his latest record, and I can remember I did save up enough money to buy an album called Diamond Dogs. But before I bought it, I actually listened to it in a little booth in a record shop in Wetherby with some headphones on. Boy, what would teenagers today think of that? In some ways it was great because it was social. I wasn't necessarily doing that on my own. There was a gang of us in the record shop in Wetherby ploughing through the album covers, and it was a social thing. It was part of being social. And I guess that's the big difference that I've seen with this banning of social media. Social for me, as a product of the 1970s, was meeting up with people in person. That's what we like to do. Get together. Everything was based around hanging out together, but not doing criminal things and being destructive and vandalising. Hanging out and going to the cinema together, going to the football match together, going for bike rides together. The other thing is that I was a member of the scout troop in Wetherby. Do they still have scouts? Yeah, I'm sure they do. Listen, before I go on, I just want you to show you this beautiful vista here at Castle Howard. I hope it'll come out. I'm just going to spin the camera around and see what you think. So that's what it's like today. It's a beautiful day here in North Yorkshire. Castle Howard, just outside York. And over in the distance there, I don't know if you can see it, that's the mausoleum for the Howard family that live in the big house here. Anyway, I digress. Just thought I'd show you that because as I reached the top of the hill here, just looked over at the mausoleum and I just thought, wow, this is wonderful. God's own country. What was the knock-on effect of the 1970s in our development as individuals? Well, I think it made us independent, resilient, adaptable. I think we've seen so much change. The 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, so much change. The internet age, mobile telephones, the growth of things like these streaming platforms. Now it's artificial intelligence. And I think our generation, and by our generation I basically mean anybody that was born sort of, I guess, late 50s through to late 60s, our generation have seen so much and adapted to those things and embraced them. I mean, hell, we're probably behind a lot of those innovations in reality when you think about people like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and those kind of people. Just going to have to go a bit careful here. It's a bit icy. I'm just on a back road down to this mausoleum that I just mentioned to you a minute ago. But yeah, you know, we created these things. Whoa, nearly went. One of the downsides of walking with a camera, and you suddenly hit a bit of an icy patch. Anyway, we're good. So apologies if I don't look at the camera, but I'm just keeping my eyes on the road here because it's a bit icy. In fact, what I might do is just stop for a minute and just get the camera behind me. So you could, I don't know if you can, what it's going to be like over there, the mausoleum and things in the background. But yeah, I think what it did for us was it created a resilient generation, adaptable, creative. I mean, I do sympathise with the kids of today. I mean, one of the things that I guess social media has created is a very easy way of bullying people, and I guess their kind of image, how they look, is important to them because it's plastered all over the internet, in theory, forever. We didn't have that. So yeah, that's me just having a bit of a rant or a ramble. Just have a quick look at the camera here, see how we're getting on, timing wise. Yep, well, I think I've probably said enough. So yeah, the 1970s, what it was like growing up in the 1970s, that's my take. What about you? What did you think to growing up in the 1970s? Were they better days than they are now? Or is it better now because of all the technology and the development and how things have changed? What do you think? Leave a comment. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.